Hey, I'm back. I released this song recently called Sewazuki, and people asked me to do a breakdown, and I definitely will be doing that. I'll show you exactly how I did it, but I'm going to do this in two different parts. Somebody asked me about the theory, how I came up with this, and all the things I did as far as the melody and harmony was concerned. I'm going to do that first, and then I'll do the sound design, mixing, and things later this week. So just stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't done that, etc. But anyways, let's get to it. If you haven't listened to the song, please go and listen to that first. It'll make everything make more sense. So this song is basically my idea of creating something happy for summer. That's where the basic idea came from. I thought, you know what, I want to create like a happy summer song. I was kind of inspired by future bass. I was like, I want to make something like future bass, or maybe it was a kawaii bass, and do something with that. But I also want to put some guitar to it, and I want to do some kind of like modern guitar. So what the young people are doing with the clean tones and the chords and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to kind of blend that together and put my own spin on it, etc. So because of that, first thing I thought was like, you know what, let me try something different. Usually, I just write the music, use the instruments, but I was like, let me try some sound effects. I usually go around Japan and I do little sound walks. I don't know. Well, I used to. I haven't done it in a while. But basically, I put on like special microphones so it creates 3D binaural sound. And by doing this, when you listen to it back with headphones on, you can hear it and it sounds like it's all around you. So I'll let you hear this. And this is just the sound of cicadas in a forest in Japan. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the sound. This kind of reminds me of summer. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of cicadas themselves, but I do think it sounds like summer. So I started with that. The next thing I did was like, okay, I want something happy. So how am I going to do that? I picked up my guitar and I thought, happy sounds. I could use major sounds and then okay, I can do it like C major, D major, etc. But I thought, you know what? Let me do it in like a Lydian mode. That's kind of like a hyper happy or spacey happy. So I decided to do it in E Lydian. I think the original idea was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do something with open strings on my guitar, but I didn't do anything with that. So that was kind of a bust, but that was the idea at first. So I did it in E Lydian, which is the same as B major, and I constructed the chords around that. For this type of thing with the kind of lead and chord playing at the same time, I felt like trying to write the melody first would be just too difficult. So I was like, let me come up with the chords first. Once I have the chords, then I'm going to come up with the melody after that. So I got on my guitar and I came up with this. Oh, I use scalar. I didn't actually use scalar to come up with the chords though. So I have E major ninth. So it's an E major seventh with a ninth there, a D sharp minor seventh, a G sharp minor ninth, or G sharp minor seventh with a ninth, and then an A triad over B bass note, and then a B 13th or a B 7th with a 13th. So this is just an E Lydian chord progression here. It's not the typical chord progression here. And what I had to do at the end was kind of make this 13th or dominant chord go back into the E, but this actually isn't in the Lydian mode. What I did was like, okay, do something Lydian, and then when we get here to the A over B and the B 13th, we'll make these like a 5-1 back into the E. And I felt that kind of grounded everything, and it didn't sound too far out that it sounded wacky or it destroyed the modality, etc. So I like this chord progression. I was like, okay, these chords sound good together. Since I was trying to do kind of like a future bass or kawaii bass type of thing, I thought, okay, these kind of more complex chords are good using the ninths and everything in there, but it's not so crazy that, people are running away or holding their ears, etc. So that's what I came up with. The next thing I was like, okay, now I need a rhythm for this. I don't just want a whole note for each of the chords. I was like, okay, let me do some kind of syncopation in here. I came up with some syncopation, and then I came up with a variation. So the second time it goes through, instead of going to A and then B 13th, it goes from G sharp minor 7, G7, F sharp minor 7, and then B7. So this is just going down chromatically, da da da, and then here, this is basically a 2/5 back to that E major 7th. So that's all that is. It's just kind of basic jazz stuff, really. But let's hear how that sounds. I'll let you hear it on piano. It's a little bit easier. So you have this. So I think this sounds a bit jazzy, but it's not so crazy that it's unlistenable, at least in my opinion. Although sometimes unlistenable is cool too. From there, I came up with various parts. I'll show you this intro part first. Basically, this is just double stops on guitar. It sounds like this. So all this is just double stops here going back and forth, and these fit with the first 3 chords. So I was like, okay, I don't even need to change this. For me, that just kind of cool where you have the same melody note, but the harmony's changing. I just really like that idea, so I use that there. Other parts here, let's talk about this build-up guitar. So for this, I just arpeggiated those chords. So this is the build-up going into the B section. It sounds like this. So these are just arpeggios. I try to put a kind of interesting rhythm on them and do some slides. I think this adds just a little bit of interest with the articulation, so that's all I did. Now let's get to the melody. This is probably the hardest part. This one took me a while to come up with because, like I said, I had the chords first, and then I was like, okay, how am I going to make this interesting? If I just play the chords, it's going to be super boring. So I was like, okay, what if I play it with different rhythms? I play the chord, do some fills in between it. I was like, okay, that sounds better. What if I do some fills and then sometimes I slide from one note in the first chord to another note in the second chord? I was like, okay, that sounds a little bit more interesting. Then for more interest, I was like, okay, what if I add some more different rhythms and I don't always just play the chord, I maybe arpeggiate them or use some other ways of breaking it up. So I did that and it came out like this. I also doubled this here, not every single note, but some of the notes I doubled here just to give it a better effect. So this is what it sounds like. So it's fairly simple. I just start with a double stop and using double stops with notes from that E major 7th chord. And then I do a little fill and then I go into that next one, which is a D minor 7th chord like this. And then I do another fill, which goes into that G minor 7th. And then it goes into an A chord and a B chord. So I play B instead of the B major 7th. But what I do there is I actually arpeggiate both of these instead of just playing them with a strumming motion. So you hear that? Ba-da-da-da-da-da. So instead of just ba-ba, I wanted to arpeggiate them because I thought, you know, if I play everything with just a strumming motion, it makes it a little bit boring. And then I play a slightly different thing here. So the first time I did double stops on that E major chord. This time I arpeggiate it and I'm using some slides into the other notes. So I slide from one chord tone into another chord tone or the chord tone for the next one. So I'll let you hear that. And then at the very end, I just go down chromatically with the chords that are there, which are the G sharp minor 7, G minor 7, F sharp minor 7, and then B13. So it sounds like this. So it just repeats. I think the only other interesting thing there is here I used kind of like a slap harmonic. That's where I just slap my strings 12 frets above where I have it fretted, and it creates an octave up effect like this. I kind of wish I would have made that louder. For me, it's really interesting. I like to hear that pop out. Maybe nobody else does, but I like to hear that. So that's basically it for the melody. For this, I kind of had to mess around with this for a long time. Since I knew the basic rhythm, I knew like, okay, chords have to be here, 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 and here. But the actual voicings of the chords and how you move between them, I think was really variable. So this is an interesting way to come up with a melody. I'm not sure if I've ever done this before, but I had lots of fun doing this. I was like, oh, I can come up with something kind of cool in here. It's like I have the basic skeleton of what I want to do, but then I have some choices I can do in different ways to move between them. And although I'm not 100% happy, I'm mostly happy with how this came out. I like this melody. And so that's how I did it. Came up with the chords first, and then I was like, okay, come up with the fills, find some different ways to play the chords, etc. And that's what came out. So that's how I came up with the melody for this. And then finally in this B section here, it's very simple actually. So I'll play it here. So, as I said before, I like that when you have like lots of complex chords, you have just one note that just kind of sustains over them. So that's what I did here. I'm just playing E flat or D sharp over and over again. So here on the E major ninth, I play that D sharp minor 7, D sharp, G sharp minor 7, D sharp, and then for this I had to move down to C sharp, I believe, for these because these are in a different key. But I just wanted to do that. It's really simple, and I think over complex chords it works really well. If you want to hear a really good example of this that's not by me, that's actually much better than my songwriting, listen to Tell Me a Bedtime Story by Herbie Hancock. He does this really well. It's one of my favorite songs, especially when it comes to harmony. It was really cool. So I wanted to do something similar with this. And that's what I came up with. Oh, another thing, I have scalar here. I didn't really use this to come up with the chords for this, although you can, and it works well for that. But what this is really useful for, it's to come up with voicing. So I have like pianos, I have synthesizers. Writing out voicings can just take a long time, and for me, it just kind of slows down the creative process, especially when you write out the voicings and you do voice leading for lots of chords, and then afterwards you're like, you know what, this doesn't work, and you have to erase everything. You know, it makes me want to pull my hair out. So with this, it makes it easy to change the voices up, etc., and I can just write in the chords I want. And then just put them in the song, and I can adjust the rhythms or the durations or whatever I want. But that's easy. Writing out these like big voicings like this, it just takes forever. I don't want to do it. So thank you, Scalar 2, doing all the hard work for me and letting me get to the creative stuff. So if you're like me and you don't want to write out chord voicings, check out Scalar 2. It'll help you out and save you some time and energy. So that's basically it, how I came up with the melody and the harmony stuff behind it. This one is, I guess, a medium level of harmony. It's not so basic, but it's not really difficult. It's fairly understandable how I'm doing it. I hope I made you understand this, and hopefully you have an idea of how I did this. If you don't and you still have other questions, let me know and I'll try to go over some of the other stuff too. And be sure to subscribe and wait for the breakdown of the sound design and all the mixing stuff. So I'll be going over that later this week. But I just thought I'd give you this one about the composition stuff. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up. As I said, subscribe if you haven't done that. And until next time, See you.